picks up right where the last one left off, namely with the massive bomb Luffy landed on Emu, which sends Emu flying completely away, and even while being blasted away, he still keeps that grimace he pulled last chapter from the hit. Still, Emu seems pretty unfazed overall. I mean, sure, he's bleeding. So the biggest damage he's ever taken on screen is definitely there, but he can react instantly, launches a new attack, and attaches 2 living Omen Flames, one onto Luffy and one onto Loki. These flames are actually able to talk. I'd say they behave a bit like one of Big Mom's homies at first glance. They're not even really hot or painful, but they can move around on the body. What's also interesting is that they don't seem easy to get rid of, and with Loki we're shown directly what they're actually meant to do, because they act like a kind of setup for a homing attack that Emu then unleashes afterward, namely Stigma. It's something like a black demonic aura sword that's massive, but it also behaves like a kind of all-piercing laser. Loki gets skewered right through the middle by it, and that seems to take him out of the fight for now, at least initially. Loki even gets launched all the way into Gunko's ice block, where she's still trapped, and even his impact can't destroy that ice block. Meanwhile, the Straw Hats are even trying to free Gunko, but they're unsuccessful too. Still, Loki manages, in a fairly passive way, to melt that ice block, because his homies come flying in, transform into a squirrel, and during that action, Ragnar ends up touching the ice block, which causes it to melt. Loki is now with Brook and the rest of the Straw Hats for the time being, completely out of breath, and definitely needs to regenerate first, which might even be a bit easier for him since Zoan powers naturally come with a kind of regeneration factor anyway. So yeah, Loki definitely isn't truly defeated, and he's certainly not dead. So, I'd say it's quite possible he'll join back into the fight against Emu again at some point in the future. It's also pretty cool that Luffy nearly suffered a similar fate because he's also got one of these Omen Flames stuck on him that he can't get rid of. But he somehow manages it by throwing away the Omen Flame together with his cloak, meaning with his clothing, which caused that destructive attack, one even bigger than Luffy himself, to miss. And honestly, if that attack hit Loki that hard, it would have spelled potential doom for Luffy. Because as I said, it was bigger than Luffy himself. That means he wouldn't just have been skewered, but potentially wouldn't have been recoverable at all. Basically completely erased. Parallel to this intense clash, 2 other fights are also heating up, namely Sama versus Zoro and Killingham versus Sanji. Let's start with Zoro's fight. I really think it's cool how confident both of them are that they can completely handle this battle. Zoro casually arrives on Sama's ship. The two have a little conversation with each other and talk about what Killingham and Sanji are each up to. Still, they don't waste too many words, and the whole conflict escalates right away. So the wielder of the hammer fights against Zoro, and honestly, it's probably extremely difficult to beat Sama right now. Without deliberately using Conqueror's Haki, which Zoro still has a bit of trouble with, fighting a Holy Knight is already tough as it is. Now Emu's Omen buff makes the whole situation basically hopeless, in quotes, and you'd probably need even stronger Conqueror's Haki just to have a chance against it. So Zoro, regardless of whether he can win this fight or not, has no choice but to surpass himself. I mean, we don't know the full extent of this buff, but we do know for sure that Sama's abilities and overall strength have definitely increased drastically. So, at the very least, Zoro absolutely has to learn to consciously use Conqueror's Haki, just like Scopper Gaben pointed out. Everything else beyond that is still up in the air. But what's definitely much more critical and complicated, at least in my opinion, is Sanji's situation, because not only is he lacking Conqueror's Haki, which makes a fight against Killingham nearly impossible, he also still has the problem that he can't fight women, which means Sasa isn't even a real target for him in this moment. So the only way for Sanji to save the day, to get the mothers and children to stop crying and reunite with each other, is to take out Killingham directly, which he does try to do. I'd also find it pretty interesting if Sanji somehow manages to break out of this so-called woman blockade, because, well, Sasa is dealing some seriously heavy damage. She's flooded the entire village, and the longer the fight drags on, the worse the damage being caused will potentially get. So I'm not saying Sanji should learn to just beat her up or anything, but rather, well, maybe try to fend off certain attacks from her, or maybe even actively try to strike back against certain things she does. But in the fight against Killingham himself, Sanji also seems to be having serious trouble. They're not on equal footing. Killingham clearly has the upper hand here, and can even knock Sanji away pretty easily. Sanji is hoping that defeating Killingham will stop Sasa, but Killingham just laughs him off. He even provokes him and challenges him to use his Conqueror's Haki to stop him, as if he can already sense that Sanji just doesn't have it. What's especially interesting, though, is that Sanji recalls a brief off-screen conversation with Scopper Gaben. Basically, it's exactly the part that got cut for us, back when Sanji asked what was actually going on with him. Well, Zoro was confirmed as a Conqueror's Haki user, and Sanji was, well, practically speechless afterward. He desperately wanted confirmation that he has it too. And well, it's a bit more complicated for Sanji, because right now, he simply doesn't have it at all. So, unlike with Zoro, his Conqueror's Haki has, in quotes, never once surfaced. It's never passively leaked out of him, unlike with Zoro or even with Luffy before the time skip. So you can't even really call it, in quotes, subconscious Conqueror's Haki in his case. But Scopper Gaben still believes that Sanji could have it. It seems like he just needs to get his so-called royal ambitions together, so that Luffy himself can rise to become the Pirate King. Because Conqueror's Haki isn't just randomly rolled, it's extremely strongly tied to your mindset, to whether you have the ambitions of a conqueror, a ruler, or simply a king. That's also exactly why it's the only type of Haki you can't actually learn, because it really just comes with your basic disposition, that you want to reach the top, that you want to achieve a lot, and that you simply have that mentality. Luffy and Zoro definitely have it easier in that regard, because they're pursuing these kinds of ultimate goals that practically define it. Sanji, on the other hand, doesn't want to reach the top. He wants to find the All Blue, but that's just not comparable to being the world's strongest swordsman or the Pirate King. So I'm definitely curious how Oda plans to resolve that, or what Oda is trying to give Sanji that might go in that direction somehow. Finally, at the very end of the chapter, we also get one more final face-off between Gear Luffy, looking properly angry and serious for the very first time, and Emu himself. Because of the awakening state, Emu also remarks that Joy Boy has returned, to which Luffy, fairly annoyed, corrects him that he isn't Joy Boy, and that he should address him by his real name instead, Monkey D. Luffy, which is also another little reminder that Luffy isn't some reincarnation of Joy Boy or anything like that, but truly his own person, who's simply walking the same path as Joy Boy as well, and carrying his flame forward.